Hi everybody, today we are going to paint some sea life. Let's start with the basics of drawing fish and other marine animals. Drawing fish is quite simple. Just create two curves and add the details. And that's it. Even more complex or ornamental fish can be broken down into simple shapes. What will make these simple shapes interesting is the texture, colors, and patterns that you apply. This principle applies to everything from basic illustrations to some more sophisticated compositions. For instance, using the same initial shapes, we can create a whale or a shark. To draw an octopus, begin with two circles for the head, then sketch the legs by marking their positions before completing the lines. You don't have to draw all 8 legs at the front. 3 to 5 are just enough, while the others can be placed in the background. This not only simplifies the process, but also creates a more organic look. Now let's get painting. For that, we will need paper, pencil, sharpener, eraser, paint, brushes, something to mix the paint, water, cloth. For our first composition, we will paint a whale. I will start by staining the background with a soft color to avoid a stark white canvas. To make the process easier and the composition more dynamic, I will make it emerging from the water. This allows us to focus on the upper half of the body while creating an interesting perspective. You can make it with flat colors, similar to what we did with the geometric flowers a few weeks ago, but we will add some shadows and highlights to create dimension. This is watercolor on cotton paper, and I usually paint on a A3 size paper, but I will always suggest you to make it as big as possible. I am mainly using two colors here, blue and black, with a touch of umber to enhance the highlights. Don't worry about excessive detail. Simply conveying the idea of a whale emerging is enough. For our second composition, we will paint a shark as seen from above. It's a simple design with basic curves. The curvier the lines, the more graceful it will look. Again, this can be done as a flat illustration. Just focus on a few key details. For instance, I initially made the fins too large, so I adjusted them and slightly enlarged the head. Finally, I added ripples to the water, and that's it. We have our shark. Using the same technique as with the shark, we will now paint a couple of carps. By adding curves, we enhance their graceful movement. I am using a soft, flat brush to create the edges and then filling them in with color. If you want to avoid flat colors, just add a few highlights and shadows. If you plan to color the background, do it before painting the main subject. Also, ensure that the background is fully dry before proceeding. For our next composition, I first mark the area with the water and then apply watercolor, letting it spread naturally. This technique creates a very organic, fluid effect. Since we're painting four of them, it will allow for experimentation with color intensity and pigment application. If you need sharp details like defined eyes or fins, wait until the initial layer is fully or partially dry to prevent blurring. This is the simplest composition of all. The fish are represented by small marks forming a line, with a few extra lines for fins and tails. Adding more fish enhances the effect. For the sake of making it quicker, I only made a few of them. However, a larger composition featuring hundreds of fish can look stunning. The beauty lies in the repetition and the simplicity. I have already transferred my sketch to the paper, so now it's time to paint. As before, I mark the edges and fill them in with color. While I could use flat colors, I will once again add some shadows and highlights to give the octopus more dimension. Once again, you don't need to paint all 8 legs. Focus on 4 or 5 most visible, while the others can be faded into the background using darker or lighter tones to enhance depth. This piece ended up looking more realistic than I initially planned, but that's okay. And there we have it, our octopus. And this is the result of our painting session today. I hope you have had fun and that you feel inspired to create your own sea life paintings. As always, keep on practicing and thank you for joining us.